Oh my god. It's Duke fucking Nukem 3D. Oh my goodness. I absolutely love this game, if it isn't quite apparent. So, I figured since I did Blood, we'll do Duke Nukem next. And as Duke Nukem is one of my favorite FPS games and my favorite of the Build trilogy, I figured what the hell. So, alright. Oh boy, here we go. So, Duke Nukem 3D, fantastic game. It's got its problems. It's not as good as Doom, in my opinion. The engine's better than Doom. Let's get that out of the way. We're going to be running this on eDuke 32, so that's what I'm going to be using to do this. It's my favorite source port. It's probably the most accessible. And let's go ahead and get started. So, we're going to be playing on Come Get Some. Damn I'm Good is the same as Come Get Some, except enemies respawn, so... Alright, let's do it. So, I absolutely love Duke 3D. I first played it on the 360 way back in the day, and it was one of the games that actually got me into PC gaming. I know it's weird because I was in my teens, but you know, it's one of those games that I just absolutely love. To this day, I play this at least once a year. It's just so good, you know, it holds up really well. I think it's not the best FPS ever made, but it comes pretty damn close. Some of the problems I have with Duke is just... I think the rockets are a bit iffy at times, which, you know, it's never been an exact science with, you know, auto-aiming rockets in old-school FPS games. For the most part, Duke does it okay. The rockets do have a little bit of a slow speed in this game compared to other FPS games. But this game's got it all, man. Toilet humor, you know, dumb, stupid references. It's just perfect, and you know, everyone kind of looks past, you know, Blood, and I wish they didn't, because Blood is still a fantastic game, and Shadow Warrior as well. But I think it's still fair to say that Duke 3D is probably leaps and bounds one of the most impressive, you know, shooters of the era it came out in. It was just... nothing was quite like this on the market. It definitely came out, you know, around Quake, but Quake is its own kind of beast. It's definitely an incredible game, and, you know, I seriously don't think there's any competition here. So let's go ahead and make a new save. Let's call it Doodle. That is good enough for me. So I'm actually going to use a little bit of a skip here. We're going to be using our jetpack with the J key, and we're going to go ahead and just do a little bit of skipping. I'm not so worried about skipping as much on this level because, well, you know, we're going to get all of our shit taken away. Plot spoiler! Oh my. And I'm not really too worried about doing that. Now, I don't have as much experience with build engine games as, you know, the other good boys out there that have probably been doing this way longer than I have, so I always say I'm a Doom man myself. I don't really have all the engine quirks and weird stuff like I know with Doom under my belt. I've also never coded in the build engine, so I have no idea how a lot of it works. I mean, it's very similar to the Doom engine, but it does have its perks here and there. I'm actually going to quick save here because I do this every time. I get super excited. I'm like, oh yeah, let's kick some ass, and then I immediately nuke myself on this room almost every time I play the game. So, Duke 3D... you know, it's just a fantastic game. I mean, its control is so smooth and snappy as opposed to Blood, which is kind of floaty. I don't think that's really a bad thing, but... yeah, damn right. Oh, what the hell. There's just so much environmental detail in, you know, this entire game that really is just... for the time this came out, this is still impeccable. Like, you gotta remember, this game came out way, way, way back when. Things like this were just revolutionary. Like in Doom, the most interaction you could have was like, you know, click on wall and have wall move up and down, and sometimes side to side, but yeah, let's do it. So, I will say this is still a very, 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 very difficult shooter. Almost every game from this time period was just absolutely brutally difficult. I mean, I wouldn't say Blood is easier, but it kind of feels easier because you get, like, you know, an actual, like, really good projectile weapon, like with the napalm launcher and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff, but of course this also had... Oh man, that was some revolutionary tech back then. You have no idea how much that upset parents back when this game came out. I still hear people talk about this game as if it's like the worst thing about women ever, and I'm like, yeah, but you're actually, you know, punished if you kill women in this game. It's really funny, because I've heard a lot of people try to say, oh, Duke Nukem's misogynistic, and I'm like, well, his goal is to get all the chicks back on the planet, so... I don't know, man, that seems like a pretty bold thing. I'd say the word you're looking for is probably chauvinistic, but we're not going to go into social politics. So, yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. I think this game has just got so much legacy behind it, because there really wasn't anything like this, you know, on the market. You had games like, you know, Quake, which they were just shooters, pure at heart, but Duke had a lot of personality that set it apart from other shooters of the era, and I think it's still better than most other build engine games. I think it's, as I said in my Blood playthrough, it's just the most accessible. It feels the most familiar, I think, to most people. Like, if you've played, you know, I'd say if you've played Doom, you've pretty much got the idea down for this. And it's a similar beat, right? It's just very quick, very bob and weavy kind of cover, and, you know, basically don't die. Get to the end of the level, don't get, you know, absolutely obliterated by every single thing and their mother. Now, this game does start off pretty easy, and you may be like, this looks really easy, and I'm like, yeah, it's one Doom Space Marine. It starts off easy, but that's also because I practice every single, like, session before, just to make sure I know what I'm doing. I want to make sure you guys get the most smooth gameplay I can possibly give you, so that way you guys know this is not as easy as it looks. So, unlike in Doom, we're not killing demons, we're killing aliens. They're a reptiloid sort of species, I guess. They're called the something. Who gives a shit, dude? You just shoot them dead and they die. Trying to give these things backstory is really not important. So, bottom line, aliens stole women, Duke's gotta kill them. Go put your foot down their face. Also, I mean, it looks rudimentary, but this was new. Like, this is a melee option in just a general FPS game that probably didn't need a melee weapon. So instead of having a melee weapon, they just give you the foot. Like, think about that for a minute. This is one of the first games to ever have just a side melee, like, just ready. Out of all the build games at this time, this is the only one that has this. I mean, you do have the, what's it called? Like the samurai sword and the fists in Shadow Warrior, but that's a whole entire different attack style. You have to actually manually select that. In Duke, you can just have a key set. I have Q for mine. Just try and give a little bit of a kick to your gameplay. So I've always been a really big fan of that. I think it's something that sets the game apart from most. I mean, technically, there wasn't anything like this. Like I said, there was, you know, shooters at the time were going for more abstract kind of approach to level design. Duke was more about interior design and all these really cool concepts, and I mean, if you've ever played Doom, you already know what I'm talking about. Like, it was very maze-like. Some things were just kind of rudimentary looking, I guess. They weren't, like, bad, but they were just, like, that was what the engine could do at the time. With a game like Duke, you could totally, you know, create a city environment and make it look like an actual believable environment. I believe it was Sandy Peterson that made the Doom cities as well. And Sandy Peterson's a lovely level designer, but I don't know, man. I think the levels in Duke are just, they're enthralling because they feel real. There's a lot of shit going on in them. And obviously the game does have its art style. I'd say that Shadow Warrior is more of your, you know, Asian, like, parody kind of game, and it has a lot of really cool forest areas in it. I actually really like those in the temple levels as well. It's a very cool looking game, and I think Duke has a very urban kind of brown palette that makes it look unique. I don't think it looks ugly, but it doesn't look like... It's not as mystical as something like Doom, or it's not as, like, you know, fantastical as something like, you know, I almost said Witch Haven, and that's a terrible game. Something like Hexen or, you know, Heretic. Climb aboard. And obviously, John St. John's wonderful, iconic, bit-crushed voice is what makes this game even more fun. So, seriously. Now, if you're ever curious why I ignore a lot of enemies in this game, that's because a lot of the enemies in this game are just absolutely vicious. So the Octobrains, which are basically like this game's Cacodemon, are absolutely devastating. They have a lot of health, they have a lot of damage output, and that's not even the worst. There is a ton of other enemies in this game that are just far more devastating than that. There's obviously the Battle Lord, which is just... It's not as bad once you understand the strategy, but understanding the strategy takes at least a little bit of effort. So, thankfully we don't have to fight one except for a boss fight. Spoiler alert, later on in this chapter, but once those start getting introduced, then you have the Liz Troopers with the miniguns, and, you know, it's... I always say this game has a very good enemy variety. It's very similar to Doom, but it's also got its own little quirks here and there. And obviously the Birth adds a brand new, like, Xenomorph-style enemy as well, which is pretty cool. Obviously this game is a parody of, like, Alien, it's a parody of Macho Man bullshit, which I absolutely love. I grew up watching shit like Total Recall and all these other just beefy dude 80s movies that are just fantastic. So, I think it's aged pretty well. I mean, it's not taking itself seriously, and I think that's what makes it really good. And by the way, if you don't shoot that tripwire, you're gonna get fucked up on this next part, trust me, it's not gonna be a good time. When you're in these little claw crusher things, you have no movement. Like, you can only move up and down. Not side to side, up and down. So, I don't know why that joke is making me laugh. It's been stuck in my head for like a week, and it's like, from side to side, and up and down. And I don't know why it's funny, so... It's also 10 o'clock, I'm a little tired, I'm kind of exhausted, but, you know, it's the end of my weekend. I might as well finish off with a video session as well, because I'm figuring, well, we're getting close to the end of my footage pile, so... This is another interesting mechanic with Duke 3D, is the shrinking mechanic. Now, you do get a shrink gun in the game, which is weird that they don't let you have it here, but it does have a very, very, very useful ability of shrinking enemies down and instant killing them. And this game does have its own BFG weapon. It's got the Devastator, which, you know, this was actually a free episode back when this came out initially. It was on shareware websites. I don't really have any memories of playing Duke 3D. My first exposure to it was, you know, the usual controversy of, oh no, it's the game that has women in it and it's horrible, ugh. And I was like, cool, I'll play that. Why not? So, I also, you know, never grew up with anybody playing it. So, for me, I don't think I played Duke until I was in probably high school. So, and that was by the time I really cemented that I wanted to be a PC gamer. And I just sort of, you know, played it on 360 first, on XBLA, and then I eventually just switched over to being a PC gamer, got eDuke 32, and the rest is history. So, I didn't really have anybody to play it with. I don't have any, you know, crazy cool deathmatch stories. I didn't deathmatch John Romero or anything cool, even though he didn't make this game. Tom Hall, how about that? So, yeah, I don't really have any crazy memories attached to it. Like, my dad actually asked me when I first played this, why are you playing this? This is like the oldest, most dumb shit ever. And I said, you know what? I like it. It's fantastic. It's fun. It's stupid. It doesn't take itself seriously, but it has really good gameplay. And I think that's kind of where it turns a lot of players off, obviously, is they expect this kind of crazy, gritty story or whatever, and it's just like, no, this game does not have a serious story. If you're wanting deep lore, this is not the game to play. So, it's so weird coming off of Fresh Supply and then playing eDuke 32 because it's a totally different engine. Also, this is a very sketchy, iffy spot, so I don't like doing that. There's a lot of issues with eDuke 32. The build engine is also a notorious workhorse of an engine. It really does, you know, struggle with a couple of things here and there. It's not as bad as it sounds, but it's hard to explain. There's a lot of issues with collision, there's a lot of issues with, you know, detection of certain things. It's a very notoriously buggy engine, but it is still a very, very wonderful engine that has so much potential. And it's cool because this was one of the first games to ever use, like, semi-sector over sector. what I'm trying to say is, in the old '90s, yeah, when I was a wee lad, just drinking Kool-Aid from a bottle with those little twisty cap things, and you know, I slammed down some Gatorade out of a glass bottle, I guess. So basically, games didn't have the ability to render sector over sector, meaning if you wanted to make an environment that had 2 layers of it, you had to do a lot of workarounds, and my god, I hope those aren't as loud as I feel like they are. Ugh, they're just a really loud, obnoxious sound, and I hope it's not too bad, because every time I've done it, it feels like it's way too loud, and I hope it's not. So we're actually going to do a secret level here. And there's a reason for that, and it's because we also get a jetpack, which is going to help us a ton on the next level. So, you know, it's not 100% required, but I usually just do this because I like having that jetpack and just skipping the next level, because it is a bit of a mess. It's not bad, but it is definitely not easy. And plus, since episode 1 is the shortest, since it was also the shareware version, I might as well do it. I normally don't do secret levels in this channel because, you know, sometimes I feel like I just can't be asked to do it. Honestly, I don't mind secret levels because they're just more levels, but I don't normally go out of my way to find them in games. So, plus this one's actually relatively easy. It's not very complicated. I just don't like the gimmicky kind of shit. I mean, in Doom you had like the Wolfenstein 3D clone levels. They just weren't very fun. And obviously in Blood, they're just kind of another level, basically. Let's see. Also a new addition to the FPS genre. Not only did you have keycard puzzles, you had fucking door locks made out of like 5 or 6 different switches, so it was a new thing. All it really does is read an input in and out. It's a very basic kind of thing. You could probably do something similar to it in Doom, I'm sure, if you really wanted to try. Why you want to do that, though, I can't tell you. That's your own business. So, I will say, having played Blood a lot recently, it is kind of a, you know, a bummer not to have dynamite and, like, the napalm launcher. I would love to see someone try and make a mod using blood weapons in Duke. It would be very interesting. I'd actually like to see that. I'm sure it's been done before. There's actually a bajillion and one, you know, Duke 3D mods out there. I have played quite a few. One of them was actually really cool. It was called Attrition, and it had a like randomizer that had like a bunch of levels made by other people, and you had like stats that you had to level up. Like, you started out relatively weak, and then you'd eventually get, like, upgrades to your med kit where you could hold on to extra med kits that you picked up through your own. Like, it was a really cool mod. I still have it. I just haven't played it in a long time. Plus, I'm not really familiar with user levels. It's just kind of, you know, I don't go out of my way to play Duke levels very often. They're pretty cool, though. I've played quite a few good ones. But yeah, there's obviously a gigantic modding scene for this era of gaming, which makes it incredibly accessible to everybody, which is something that, you know, I think people don't realize. This was a big deal. I want to say it was, oh, I can't remember who said it. I want to say it was like GG Interactive or something. I hope I'm quoting this correctly. They're a wonderful channel. They did a really great retrospective on old FPS games.
Let's rock.
Yeah, let's rock. And they did this really cool point that it wasn't that you just bought, you know, Duke 3D. You bought access to an entire library of mods and fun shit, you know. That was something that was really cool about this era of gaming. Actually, I think it was Noah Gervais. I'm pretty sure it was Noah Gervais on his Half-Life playthrough. He was pointing out how, yeah, that was the case, because he was talking about They Hunger, because it was a free mod, and I actually love They Hunger. It's a fantastic mod. It's goofy, it's stupid, it's fun, it's great. I love it. I love the weird shit in that game. It's tonally strange, but I quite love it a lot. So, I'll do it someday. It's not very long either. It's probably only about 2 or 3 hours. So this is the Abyss. This is the last level in the chapter set. So you can do this without the jetpack, but I'm going to do it with it just to make my life a lot easier. Something that was really new at this point in gaming was probably this. I mean, it's not anything exciting, really, because, yeah, they had flying in Rise of the Triad, but it was really iffy. So Now this level does have a couple of quirks. I will point that out now. There's a lot of sectors you have to activate to make it work properly. If you don't, it's not gonna, you know, correctly function, so you have to make sure you're doing everything correctly. The jetpack really only helps in this section here. You don't actually need it. I just like to do it to get this area quicker. So, you also notice I'm ignoring a couple of enemies here and there, and that's because they generally just sort of bottleneck over towards you. Enemies aren't really that dangerous in Duke 3D. They're definitely dangerous, don't get me wrong, but they're not anything near as psychotically aggressive as shit from, like, Blood that will just actually hunt you down and fucking... Oh, yeah, they're not like that, thank God. They're pretty easy for the most part. I think the Liz Trooper is probably the most common enemy, at least in this chapter, and they really don't do all that much damage. Now, I believe I can get a secret to do this. Oh, that just scares the shit out of me. If you've ever played a build engine game, you know how finicky it is. Fresh supply really did help, you know, balance things out. Also, if you have a jetpack, you can go and find this little secret here. You're not supposed to be here. I love that. That's always gotten me every time I see it. I'm like, oh, that's a good joke. Because there's no jetpack on this level, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, it's a sequential thing, so... Also, if you haven't noticed, the foot can actually be used to stun lock enemies. That's a very effective strategy you want to get used to doing, because it's really, really useful. That little tiny bit of extra damage is usually just enough to make it so you can kind of like stun lock enemies with a shotgun if you're careful. So, there's another secret over here. I really do recommend getting that RPG. And these are hard to see, but there is these little handprints that show you where these are. Now, I can't ever remember how to get this secret to activate. You're supposed to go in that fire, and you get like a... I don't remember, I think it's a Holoduke or something. And I just never really do it. The Holoduke is not very good in terms of, like, distracting enemies. It's actually pretty bad about it. So, I don't really recommend it. I'm sure it's okay in multiplayer, but in single player, no. So make sure that explodes. If you don't, this is going to be a really bad time. So, yeah. As long as you got that sector to activate, you can pretty much do the level properly. So, and after you do that, you can go ahead and get shrunk back down, and we can go out of this area. I really do love this game. I can't stress it enough. It's something I play at least once a year because it is really that good. I've met people that have never played this, and I always feel really bad for them because it's an actual blast of a game. I think most people assume it's going to be some, like, dumb bullshit game like Duke Nukem Forever, but it's really not. It's more of an actual FPS game than it is like some jokey, schlocky game, which is what I think disappoints people when they realize it's not just some easy, you know, game. Games from this era were very difficult, and they really did punish you and required a lot of precision and shit, which is probably shocking to most people nowadays, but back then, I think everybody probably never finished this game. It's fucking hard. Especially the Birth. I think the Birth is one of the harder... I think it's about on the same par as, like, Blood in terms of difficulty. I will say, maybe it's just my experience with this game. I don't find it as hard as Blood. But that, like I said, that could just be an experience thing. I also have played this more than I've played Blood. But I think Blood is actually very, very challenging. I think it's the second hardest. I think probably Shadow Warrior is way harder. So this is a Battle Lord. Alright. So he has 2 attacks. He's got a, like, grenade attack, and then he has that. So that is actually a hit scan attack, and it is line of sight based, so I'm going to slam down some steroids here, make sure I'm going the right speed. You also want to be very careful. You can accidentally hit yourself doing this. It's very annoying. Rockets and Duke, like, deal a shitload of damage. That's all I can tell you. So, he should be pretty dead at this point. This is a very iffy fight. There we go. You hear him say that, and then he's done. God, I love that. After wiping the blood and brains from his boots, Duke explored the alien ship, Monitor showed a titanic alien ship hovering above Earth with dozens of smaller ships offloading green cocoon-like pods. One showed them in close-up. They all held women, still alive. Just like the ones Duke encountered. Duke glowered. I can barely see that. I think it's glowered. I think it's supposed to say glowed, but I think they typed it wrong. Duke glowered in the pale green monitor light and set the auto-destruct sequence on the alien ship. He stared at the screen once again. No one steals our chicks and lives. So, yeah. That's pretty much the first chapter, so I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I'll see you in the next one.